How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre III from 1990, not to be confused with the much later entry in the series simply called Leatherface. This is part 3 from 1990. This is directed by Jeff Burr and stars Kate Hodge, Ken Foree, who you know from Dawn of the Dead, and Viggo Mortensen, who you know from Lord of the Rings, Aragorn. So, some pretty cool names in this movie. And yeah, so that's really cool to see these two in here, but that being said, this is kind of the forgotten movie in the original series. You had the first two, which were directed by Tobe Hooper, the original classic, and then the sequel, which is a bigger, more comedic take, which eventually developed a cult following later on. And then you got part 4, which was the so bad it's good one with the insane McConaughey performance. So part 3 doesn't get talked about as much, and it's more of the forgotten one. Now, I had people, I did a DVD collection 2-part video where I talked about all the different Texas Chainsaw movies, and people were saying it's better than it gets credit for. And the thing is, a lot of times, you rewatch part 1 and 2 over and over, and this kind of pales in comparison to part 1 and 2. And I decided to go ahead and watch this after having spent a little time since I last watched the first two. I mean, I watch the first two all the time, but I gave those movies a break, and I waited a little bit to have my head clear and review this under its own merit. And it's not a perfect film by any means. It still has a fair bit going for it, and there is a lot to like here, but there are significant problems, and that's hard to deny. That being said, let's just go ahead and dive into the plot. I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers, but I do want to say my piece on a few plot points and make sure you guys have a basic idea as to what this movie's about. So primarily just talking about setup here. We open it up with the text crawl that all the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies have. And here we find two important things. One, Sally from the first movie died in an asylum in 1977, which is really sad, and we can add her to the list of horror movie protagonists that were cool but had ultimately disappointing deaths, either in the early moments of a sequel or off-screen between movies. It's a sad trend in horror films, you know. I don't know why they keep doing this. We also find out that one of the Sawyer family, after part 2, W.E. Sawyer, was imprisoned and blamed for all the crimes. They say that they thought Leatherface was his split personality. This, of course, we as an audience know is false, and he was executed in 1981. Now, that being said, W.E. Sawyer, we know Drayden Sawyer's real name. Old man is Drayden Sawyer, and Leatherface and Grandpa appear in this movie, which means that W.E. Sawyer must be Chop Top's real name. Although that being said, this whole execution thing, if All American Massacre, the film that the guy who played Chop Top's actually trying to get out, if that ever does come out, it'll probably contradict this, but we'll see if that ever gets off the ground. And also, W.E. Sawyer, not to be confused with W.E. Slaughter from part 4. Anyway, we jump into the actual plot. We see there's a guy and a girl. They're on a trip, and their relationship's on the rocks, and the girl is going to be going to Europe, and the guy feels that this will be just the final bit of strain their relationship needs for it to be completely over. They're taking this trip because the girl's father wants this car, and they're transporting the car for him and driving a long way down all these roads. Now, while all this is going on, there's a story about how a lake has been drained and they found a whole ton of bodies on the bottom. So we know the Sawyer family has been up to some killing in between the movies. And here we get a brief appearance of Stretch, the radio DJ from Part 2, which makes her the only non-family member to appear in more than one Texas Chainsaw movie. So it's cool to see her. I wish it was a bigger part because she's a great character. But moving along, the couple stops at a gas station. They meet Viggo Mortensen, Tex, who tells them about a secret shortcut that's supposed to take time off the freeway. The gas station attendant, Alfredo, goes nuts, and they have to kind of bust out of there really quick, and they go down this this shortcut. Along the way, they meet Leatherface. Things appear to be going quite bad, and they eventually crash their car into Ken Foree's car. The pair wake up, they meet Ken Foree, and he's a cool prepper character, and he could be a perfect person to help them out of their situation. And along the way, they also meet a final girl type character. You see, her group had just been all killed but her from the Sawyer family already, and she gives them a vague warning. So overall, you have a group of 4 people, so that right away kind of tells you one of the problems with this movie. You only have 4 survivor characters. There's not going to be a huge kill count in this movie, which, yeah, is kind of a problem. You know, you do a slasher movie, you have to find a way to get some characters in there to kill, which is why Friday the 13th would later start doing what they call murder vignettes, where people who are unrelated into the movie just walk in and get killed. They didn't have that yet here, and in turn, not the highest body count in this movie, so that is a definite problem. Along the way, you know, they run through the woods, they're gonna find the house, and they're gonna do a lot of callbacks to the first one, which is another thing worth mentioning. You know, they have to do several things from the first one. You have to get around the dinner table. Alfredo even takes a picture just like in Part 1, and there's a fair bit of callbacks, and whenever they happen, they always feel more cheesy than, you know, charming, and that's another thing to mention. And I guess I'll go ahead and talk about the biggest problem with this is the new family. Now, Leatherface and Grandpa are the only ones to come over from the first 2 movies. Everyone else isn't, and Drayden's presence is sorely missed, and a lot of this family is okay, but not great. You have a Tinker, who has a hook for a hand, and he's big into machines, and he scratches his head, kind of like Chop Top did. Okay. You have Alfredo, who has some funny dialogue, again, kind of like Chop Top's dialogue, but overall just okay. And then you have Mama, who talks with one of those speakers in her throat. You know, if you smoke, you might end up getting that. And again, she's okay, but they're all not super memorable. Tex, Viggo Mortensen's character, not the biggest, most complex character written, but Viggo Mortensen's performance really does drive it. He gets mad when people call him by his real name. I think it's Eddie. And, you know, he's just the actor really pushing this part, and you can see why he became a lot more famous after this movie. Other than that, you also have a little girl character, Leatherface's daughter. This little blonde girl shows up in the house, and you soon find out she's with the family, and she goes and sits on Leatherface's knee, and the two seem to really care for one another. And it's not explicitly stated right off the bat that's what she is, but then later you do get the line, "Oh, Leatherface sure does make some sweet babies," so you know it's his daughter, but not much more of the character is explained. And even though it's cool to see that Leatherface has a daughter and that there's someone in his big crazy family that cares for him and he cares for her, and it's a sweet relationship. She's not in any of the other movies, and it's a character that I would really like to see more of, but yeah, she's here and she's gone, and we don't find out too much about her, but it's an interesting concept, and I wish it had more play. So she's cool, and then of course you got Leatherface and his more grungy design, and I can appreciate the cool grungy design. It's another new actor who does the job pretty well. Now, confusingly though, he's called Junior in this movie, which doesn't make a bunch of sense. Maybe this is just a nickname, but in part 2, his real name was revealed to be Bubba Sawyer, and presumably Drayden Sawyer was his father, and to be a junior, technically, his father would have had to have been Bubba Sawyer Sr., but that character, as far as I know, doesn't exist, so I'm guessing that Junior is more a nickname for him around here. I don't know. It's a little plot inconsistency. But yeah, you get some good family members and some not as good. But overall, okay enough. And that's kind of the thing, you get this movie, after the car crash, it's the big chase through the woods and the home scenes, kind of like the original. A lot heavier on the woods, and when movies do that, it's usually budget issues. If a show or movie has budget issues, they go straight to the woods, because that's the cheapest place to film. Now, kind of confusingly, there's a ton of swamps in this movie, and there's not really too many swamps in Texas. This channel is actually based in Texas, and I suppose if you go to the right place you could find them, but swamps aren't really common down here. Maybe this is next to Louisiana? I don't know. But the chases are fine, and they're good enough. You get some really good spooky dark lighting, you get some fun jump scares, and overall as a slasher movie it plays out pretty good with a good chase, but bear in mind, like I said earlier, not too many people to kill, so you don't get great kills, and it starts off pretty good, but it does get a little silly to the end. I mean, there's part where Leatherface's chainsaw operates underwater without him holding it, and I'm like, that shouldn't work. And then that being said too, it kind of wraps up really quickly once it gets to the end, that happens, boom, boom, you're done. And there's a few scenes like, a big open field that people can still sneak up on each other in. There's definitely a lot of faults, but that being said, throughout most of it, it is a competently made slasher that sadly didn't have enough characters to do cool, big, gory kills, but the chases were fun enough. Leatherface is still good, and Leatherface's daughter and Viggo Mortensen, Tex, there's some cool enough characters, but yeah, it's just not enough people to kill, not enough of the original family members, and the new ones aren't as good as the Hitchhiker, Chop Top, or Drayden there. But for what it is, it's a fairly well-made slasher. It's just, not the best, and that's, kind of why out of the first 4 films, this is the one that kind of fades into obscurity, But that being said, it's not bad, it's just not great. And overall, if you want to sit down and watch a slasher movie, if you want to see all the Texas Chainsaw movies, it's not a bad pick, it's just not the best. Overall, it's fine. If you want to watch it, you can. It's just not something you have to. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You're really helping the channel out. I'll put a relevant playlist on the bottom if you want to see more videos from me. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom.